Thought I'd make a video and show you what I'm doing on my K5 Chevrolet. Hinge pins and bushings are worn, so on my K5 Blazer, the diesel one, which is over there, I took a torch and I cut a huge notch here with a torch, and I burned the door a little bit, but it didn't matter, the truck's a piece of junk. So I had a different idea on this one. I took the Sawzall with a demolition blade, and I also had my phone fixed today at the Verizon store. I paid them enough money, so they moved some memory from my internal to my SD card. And they're going to call me tonight at 9 o'clock and do some more work. So the problem was the door was striking real low and scraping the top of the striker pin, which I've rotated slightly. It's over there at the top. But it's so easy to fix if you know what you're doing, which most people don't. So what you do is you take off the door part of the hinge, which is right over here, and that springy thingy doesn't move, luckily, because good luck putting that thing back in. Then you take a Sawzall with a metal blade and you cut the pin, but if you drop the door, it swings shut. So you put it on a jack stand with a piece of wood, but it's loose. It's just holding it open. You can also use a bungee cord, a long one, and attach it to the wheel or something, because you need access to get this thing off. It's a tight squeeze to remove this thing. It comes out of there, but it ain't easy. Then you take a Sawzall with a good, strong, thick demo metal blade, and you cut the pin, but the problem is the Sawzall foot hits the door and the blade hits here. So if you don't want to mangle things, you take this $1 Chinese dollar store crowbar and you crow on the, why do they call it a crowbar? You crow on the pin, which is 3/4 cut through, and it eventually breaks. And there's the pin. And I cut almost all the way through it. Anyways, I cut the pin and I bent it, and you can't remove it because it's crimped in place at the factory. Wait a minute, there's the camera. It's crimped in place. See those crimps? It's pinned in place. And you can't lift it up without taking out the top or the inside hinge half, because pin will hit the door, and you don't want to mangle the door. So you have to move the door away. You've got to cut the pin in half, and then you go to your local Ford dealership or Chevy dealership and you buy some GM. You can buy these online now. This is a collection I've had for 25 years. Here's the GM bushings. They're really thin. The sidewall's thin. And here's a Ford one. And if you can believe it, Ford makes the exact same bushing with a thicker outer diameter. And then there's the GM monster bushings, which I've got right here when the hole's oversized. And they actually use these on production cars, and don't ask me which ones used what. But there's the original GM. Check this out. Here's some nylon ones from the 60s. These are oil light bronze. They're bronze that absorbs oil. There's the GM ones. There's a Ford one. There's a GM oversized one, which they actually used as a stock part. So the GM part number is right here. 204-29500. 204-29500. But these are packages I bought 20-25 years ago. There's the oversized ones, the monster ones. And I bought these at a flea market somewhere, made in China. So I don't have a GM envelope. Nope, I got the Ford ones, the medium-sized one right over there. The Ford part number is hard to read. One package of 8 pieces, D90Z or Z dash D90Z dash 6522841 dash C. And I've got lots of these to last a lifetime. And the pin, you can buy these at a flea market, swap meet, LMC truck, or foreign part, not a foreign part, but an American part supply. So what you do is you take a couple of bushings, the nice thin ones, and my holes are just ovaled ever so slightly. So this should fit in here just fine. And you can't hammer it in because it'll disintegrate. They're very, very soft and crumbly. And this truck is not in as bad a shape as I thought for a 30-something-year-old truck. It was babied until the previous owner couldn't afford to maintain it. You tap it in really gently, because I've busted these. You can even use the wooden end of the hammer. And then you put this thing back into place lean on the door. I'm leaning on the door with my shoulder, and the piece of wood just fell out. And then you put the phone on pause for a second, or you just set it right down here. I wonder if you're upside down. I know that sun is shining right there. Let me see if I can block that with something. Give me a second. There, I put a piece of cardboard, the one I was leaning on yesterday. So I got the door open right to the end. Let's see if I can wiggle this thing into place. There we go. The hardest part is cutting out the old pin, which you need a Sawzall or a torch. Or you can't hammer it out of there, it's not coming out of there. You gotta cut it. You take your new pin right there. I think I salvaged this because it was crimped here. Boy, that could use a little grinding. I wonder if that's going to fit through the bushing. Look at that. It's a used low mileage pin. Here's a brand new one. I'm going to take this to the grinder. Give me a second. All right, Miss Hip Chick just pulled up. So I took my grinder, I ground off those nubs. So this will slide through smoothly. Yep, nice tight fit. Yes, nice perfectly closing door. And you take the pin, put it in the hole. You take your biggest hammer, your BFH, move the door away slightly. There goes the cardboard. And it just clears the door. Glad this is not a customer's vehicle until I sell it, because it's scratching the door on the inside. Then you get to the bottom one, you gotta pull the pin with your finger and tap her through. The hinge mounted on the cowl, and then that's it. And you drive her home. It's got some serrations on the top that lock it in, semi-lock it in. In later years, GM used a C-clip, or earlier years, yeah, in the 70s. Then they went to a crimping method. I'm going to take my welder and give it one little zap, because that pin will, in time, there, put my cardboard back to block the light. That pin, in time, will work its way back out of there. So that's it. Pretty simple. I'm sure there's a lot of videos on YouTube. You need lots of tools. This is not a job for an amateur. I actually worked at a garage 30 years ago that used to put a drop of weld, electric weld, on here. And it worked on the taxis. They didn't have time to dick around with this crap. You can actually see the clamping marks when that hinge was manufactured. See that clamping mark? So that's it. I'm just going to take my electric welder and put a little zap on the bottom so it doesn't back out of there. You can't peen it like the factory did, so give me a sec, I'll get the welder. Okay, 10 minutes later, I just changed Miss Hip Chick's license plate bulb on her Mercedes. One burned out, and then a couple months later, the other one burned out. Kind of odd they did it at the same time. Usually they burn out very independently of each other. Light bulbs, headlights. So I've got my MIG welder buzzing away. I need to go 2 seconds on that bottom. I got my welding hood on. And let's see.